Hello and welcome to Pale Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network where we reflect on Wildbow's most revived work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we're coming at you live in the Discord. Huzzah!
Huzzah.
Huzzah, 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 huzzah. Now, a bit of housekeeping before we start, Elliot.
Yeah, just, well, this is really only for the people who are here live, but it's daylight savings switch over, I think, in the US and maybe Europe, Northern Hemisphere, like in 24 hours. So we're not changing time, so the time will change for you. So figure that out.
Yeah, but so this is only for the people who are live, you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't really affect people who listen after the fact.
So theoretically, we could have cut this out of the episode.
No, because I want people to realize the sort of content they're missing out on by not coming live.
Great stuff. Great things like reminders about daylight savings time.
No, yeah, well, somebody's got to listen to this on their way to work. They're late. They didn't realize daylight savings ticked over, and now they're going to realize if they were here live, it wouldn't have happened.
And they're on their way to work, but they also live in the US and work in Australia or something.
Yeah.
So that yeah.
No,
but in fairness, before we started recording this episode today, we did just kind of chit chat about random things like Jurassic World and other bits and pieces, speed limits on highways, that kind of stuff. That's the real juicy content that you miss out on by not coming to the live recording. So if you want that kind of stuff, t-shirt changing, real high octane topics. But anyway, let's get into it. Let's talk about Go for the Throat 23B, which is an absolute classic.
Sorry. Yeah, just before we get into it, I just want to say as well, was I the only one who I saw 23B and I was like, wait, did we skip A? And then went to the table of contents and was like, wait, holy shit, that Kelsey one was this arc? I'd totally forgotten that was 23.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that too. When I saw 23B, I thought, wasn't that a Kristen Ritter show? And then got distracted. So anyway, this is one of those classic Wildbow interludes where we get a character who we, hated and learn to pity them, I guess is the way to phrase it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those eye-opening interludes where you're like, oh, I guess.
Yeah, no, I like it. I especially like it because we're following Cameron in this chapter, in case you haven't read it or whatever.
Yeah.
And like Cameron is already a character that we're set up to kind of feel bad for, in the sense that we know that she's kind of being taken advantage of by Seth, right? So she's already in a, not. I didn't give a shit about Cameron, but kind of knew that she was being kind of taken advantage of in a way that's very easy to map onto real world situations, and right, so it's very like pitiable, even if she's doing dodgy shit. Wildbow wasn't satisfied with that, just had to keep kind of sticking the knives in, which was pretty fun.
Pretty much.
So anyway, Cameron is starting this chapter by reflecting on what she likes about Seth, which is very fun, especially because most of it is just his resemblance to the hot man Alexander.
Yeah, I was reading this and I was just like, as she's like description fucking him here, I was like, who do you think is a more embarrassing replication of Alexander, Seth or Alexander?
Well, doesn't it happen later where there's a, on one of these augury tools, there's a piece that represents Alexander, but Cameron isn't sure if it's Seth or Alexander. It's just rough. It's just rough. But in fairness, we do kind of get the picture that Cameron doesn't seem to actually like Seth that much in this chapter. Like, I don't know.
Oh, she does and she doesn't. I mean, it's a hot take. It's not a healthy relationship, so it's tricky.
Well, twist.
But yeah, no, definitely, I don't know. I think we need to give Cameron to America for a bit, and they can have, like, the two of them can detox from whatever this Bellinger attraction thing that they've got going on is.
Yeah.
I mean, the bit, like, just to dunk on Seth for a bit, which I'm sure we'll do a number of times throughout today's episode, but, like, Cameron tells us that he straight up went through Alexander's wardrobe and is wearing his old clothes.
Mm.
And I was like, my dude, like Seth is, doing a lot of bad stuff and is a bad person, but also I couldn't help but feel a little bit sorry for, like, he's that fucking sad and pathetic that he's dressing in Alexander's old clothes to try and emulate him. Like, this dude needs help as well. Like, that's
Yeah,
just so pathetic.
it's clearly pretty. It's a pretty wild idea that Seth, who is on Charles's side, is still kind of idolizing Alexander so much. Like,
I
there's
mean,
this.
Charles does it a bit too, to be fair. Like,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
so strange though. There's this like legitimacy and respect that Alexander had that clearly Seth and Charles both kind of desperately want and will never get,
Yeah.
which I just think is great.
It's just so funny how now that Seth like found his mojo, he's just so desperate to use it to become discount Alexander. Like, it's so,
Yeah.
yeah, like, dude needs therapy.
Yeah, it's pretty pathetic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something fun that gets introduced early on in the chapter is this. Well, on initial read, at least, the chapter kind of misdirects you into thinking it's like a lie detection kind of site. But then it's a bit cooler and more subtle than that as we find out what it actually is. But it's this cool little site that Cameron has that effectively fogs up people's breath with colors to give her a little bit of an extra hint about what their intentions behind words are.
Yeah, but I love the way, even though it's not explained at first, you kind of immediately get like the general vibe of what it's like, whenever people say really harsh things, she's like, oh, they were red words. And then there's some yellow words, and then there's some green ones, and you're kind of like, okay, well, I've done a traffic light before. Like,
Yeah.
I can get the general vibe. And we get like the full description later, and that reveals it as, this like really interesting full system, like you said. But I do like that it didn't feel like we were getting through it in the deep end, because right from the get-go, you're sort of like, okay, red words bad. That, like, check, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I do love the sort of the full system we get, and it's like, because it's this insight into the intent of words, which in this universe, like, she's like, oh, it's a dumb little fairy trick, and I was like, that seems incredibly valuable. Like, the whole thing in this universe is everyone technically tells the truth, but they're hiding behind their intent or whatever, and it's like, now you get to see what their intent was. That's huge.
Yeah, no, I think it was pretty interesting. I feel like it's the kind of trick where people could pretty easily fool it if they wanted to, but if you're not actively thinking about it, it would be a pretty good advantage. Yeah.
Yeah. I also love the little bit where she talks about how there's blue words, and those are like words that have to do with like kind of surrender and retreat and compromise. And she's like, yeah, you don't see many of those here. Like, especially in this chapter where it's like the blue heron is becoming the red heron visually in so many ways. I love that little line.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun times.
Yeah. Some of the little things just from the start of the chapter I wanted to bring up. Like, the first one was just, I thought it was really funny that like Cameron is just kind of doing what I would describe as volunteer work here. Like, the idea that what she's doing to help prepare for the war that's about to take place here is kind of moving boxes around, and like this feels like a job I used to do at a school fete. Like, it's
right.
What she's doing here is not that different to what I imagine is exactly the kind of shit she's trying to escape. Like, she's somehow gotten dumped with the shitty moving stuff around volunteer job anyway.
I do like that call out. Like, it is, you're right, the exact kind of stuff that presumably she was forced to do when she was younger, which led to all this trouble.
And she obviously, unlike with the $50 bill, she gets to keep the $25,000 bracelets. So that's like, an improvement, I guess. But I did think it was funny that there's a lot of focus for Cameron on why this is better and all that. And I thought it was super interesting that given all that, she's still just kind of doing grunt work.
Classic thing, yeah. Cameron, what a fun character she proves to be.
Yeah, she's fascinating. I would not be upset at another Cameron interlude soon.
Yeah.
So the other thing, like obviously they're going through these storerooms, and these are like storerooms that we know have been heavily emptied out by the other Bellingers already. And also there's just so much shit in here, and it's also like Alexander was just hoarding shit. And I know that we've kind of been told that, but for some reason, this chapter, I really felt it. I was just like, Alexander was sitting on just so much shit here.
Just a classic hoarder.
Wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, these bracelets, like, I know they have like a 7-year recharge or whatever, but like, I don't know. Use that shit. It's so much more sympathetic for like Jen's position, like, for how much she resented the Bellinger augury circle for hoarding all this stuff and not sharing it with the rest of the Bellingers, because they were just sitting on shit and not using it.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's Jen was right. I think we can all agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like, actually, I want to talk about this weirdo magical caretaker thing, because it's so funny that there's some Bellingers that have like kind of pseudo, or not defected. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Is that they've had to not choose a side because they want to be the kind of caretakers for these magical artifacts. It's just so weird and creepy and cool. I love it.
I was surprised that Team Charles agreed to it. Well, like, because Cameron introduces it, and it's like there's a bunch of Bellingers who fully turn-coded, like our main
like
man
Bodhi.
But then there's also, like this silent woman, and there's just a group here who, sort of agreed to neutrality, and they're just in the interest of the Bellinger family as a whole. And I guess I thought I was a little bit surprised that Team Charles was so okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the pitch is, hey, we can help you not fucking blow yourself up with these magical artifacts or whatever, right? But you're right. The arrogance of your Charleses and your Seths would make you think that maybe they'd just be like, oh, let's go for it. I don't know.
Yeah. I guess I'm just interested how those Bellingers swung that, because I wouldn't have expected, like, one of the big things with Team Charles when they first retreated here was that it was very like, everyone who's on our side comes here, and if you don't come, then you're no longer on our side. So I thought it was interesting that they'd let a bunch of Bellingers stay here who were neutral. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's just a little surprising to me. Like, I think, what's fun again, what continues to be fun about the villains' stories, they're not fully caricaturally like evil. Like, there's some borderline good teamwork and stuff here. Like, Griff is actually pretty alright in this chapter.
Well, so alongside that one creepy weirdo who's bound to silence, there's another creepy weirdo who we wish was bound to silence, who is Bodhi. Yeah, I mean, like, to me, it's just kind of, how do you not realize you're the baddie sometimes? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you're just clearly the baddie, and that's.
Sorry, Ruben, this actually gets cleared up at the end of the chapter. Seth tells us he didn't mean it like Cameron took it.
Oh, well, that's okay then.
She was actually kind of overreacting. Like, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Let's play a little game here, Elliot, called Devil's Advocate, where we try and explain what could "I'd fuck you but your Seths" possibly have meant other than him just being a piece of shit. Is there any possible explanation? Like,
I mean,
oh, I mean, it's a compliment. It's a compliment. Is a good answer. Yikes.
Yeah, you can't compliment people anymore, Ruben.
Yeah, it's PC culture going mad. That's what I say.
No, there's that weird vibe of like, and I see Wildbow saying it in the chat too. Like, my thought was it was coming from this place of like, there's a twisted world where he thinks what he's saying is kind of honorable because it's like he's respecting boundaries, but he's so clearly only respecting Seth's in the way he phrases it. It's ridiculous.
Well, and the other part to it is he's kind of saying it as a, well, obviously the fact that it's tinted in the red mist kind of makes sure we know it's not meant to be a compliment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if that was ever under doubt, but like, it's not.
Yeah, see, I got
he's saying it in a way to upset her, right? Like, he's clearly saying it as an attack, and that's obvious without the red mist. So, like,
well, the vibe I get is because he gets up a little bit upset that she's like scared of him. So I kind of got the vibe that this was like his way of, insulting, like it's a sort of really incel reaction to like
Yes.
women being uncomfortable around you, so trying to like flip it so it's them that's the problem, and that sort of shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but like implicit in that is him kind of masking off and saying, I'm going to say this to hurt you because I know that it's me treating you as an object, right? Like
Yeah.
it wouldn't make sense if that wasn't the case. So it's this crazy like, and obviously it's like very realistic. People can say things that clearly betray their shitty nature without kind of, I don't know, recognizing their shitty nature, I guess. But
Yeah.
like, I don't know. It's just such a villain thing to do. It's crazy.
Yeah, but she was acting afraid of him, so she started it
So
by being
she did deserve
uncomfortable.
it. Is that what you're saying, Elliot? Yeah.
I mean, like that's how he sees it. That's what's so
Yeah.
fucking wild about
God.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Ay,
yeah,
ay, ay.
but it's a fun, like, well, not fun. It's a horrible recurring motif for Cameron in this
Uh,
chapter of like
uh,
noticing that people like this is what this site gives her the ability to do is like because there's other moments where there's a bit where the one of the younger new recruits isn't listening to her and then sort of agrees when Travis tells her to do
yeah.
something, and she says like yes sir, and it like Cameron really notices that it's like the whole point of that interaction there was like this girl was like, now she knew she was going to have to do it anyway, but she managed to swing it in such a way where it's like, well, I'm listening to Travis and not you.
Mm,
um
yeah.
and that's a big thing for Cameron. Like Cameron's really focused on kind of where respect and stuff goes to and comes from. And yeah.
It's kind of interesting to think that if you're Cameron and you're kind of you've existed in a world where people like Seth can say, "Oh, he didn't mean it how you took it," right? Which is obviously bullshit. It's immediately, obviously, apparently bullshit. But Cameron has now given herself this mechanism to know that it's bullshit with the kind of
Yeah.
mist on the words. It's very interesting that she's like removing any question that people can kind of try and use misunderstanding as a way to justify shittiness. I think it's quite I don't know, quite fun.
Well, yeah, and there's some stuff in the notes later to talk about like the way Cameron really funnily overlaps with all three of the Kenneteers. But this is like
Mm,
you're just touching on like one of her big Lucy ones. Is like that was a huge thing for early story Lucy. Like her whole trust her instincts about like what people were saying was like
yes, yes.
the big thing in her implement ritual.
Yeah.
Um, and this is sort of like Cameron hasn't had that thing where she can trust the instincts, so she's replaced it with this site that sort of
Mm,
lets her see it, so she doesn't even need her instincts, and she still can't quite like yeah, like I don't know, it's like there's this she's trying to reduce the social game, but she still can't play it because she's so traumatized by everything that's been happening to her.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, Cameron. So yeah, throughout this chapter, we're kind of jumping back in time a bit, and so here's where we get our first hint of. Actually, no, sorry, we're not jumping back in time. We get this. We get this first hint of Cameron's crime and strained relationship with her mother without jumping back in time, just as some other kids are bullying her for her theft of charity money, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and this is where like we really start to focus in on, I think, like yeah, the way so much of social interaction for Cameron seems to revolve around I don't know, like needing respect. Like she has
Yeah.
real issue. I'm struggling to phrase it coherently, but she has real issues around the way people see her. I mean,
Yes.
obviously, like her like body image issues factor into that in a big way. But it
Yeah.
also like you can see the way her mum, being this person who's obsessed with being the kind of queen bee volunteer person, has really soaked into Cameron, and like she needs to, as much as she needs someone like Seth to kind of condescendingly look, like value her, she also needs the people who she sees as below her to respect her in another way. It's like
Mm,
kind of unhealthy on both fronts.
yeah. Yeah, she's kind of desperate for respect, and it's
Yeah,
clearly not, she's not getting any from anyone.
yeah,
Yeah, so I think it's fun. It's fun to set up like stealing money from charity. It's just like such a classic villain move, right? Like You know, like it's a classic thing that only bad people would do. You know what I mean? Like even the Joker
Yeah.
wouldn't blow up an orphanage or whatever, right? Like, you know, that's probably not. I'm sure there's the case where that's not true, but whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um, and I think that's very fun because we kind of know that people have been gossiping about Cameron, and I don't know, it's just a fun setup to be like, hey, remember, here's why Cameron's a baddie, and let's get the context on it.
Yeah, it sort of serves as our reminder that this was like the backstory we've heard about
Yeah,
that she stole from this charity event. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like there was probably for a lot of us already a sneaking suspicion that it wasn't going to turn out to be that. But part of me was also, I don't know. This is very small town drama to me. I feel like
totally. It's not
somebody
like
stole
she
$50.
killed somebody, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah, from a charity event. I was like, oh, that'd be the talk of the town for like 3 months or whatever. But it's like, I think this is the thing with Cameron, right? Is like she's so obsessed with
yes,
that the reputation and respect stuff that like she also can't let it go.
yeah. And so we get to see this moment almost immediately in our first little jump back in time, and it is kind of rough. But almost immediately, I was already like, Cameron had already kind of redeemed herself to me, like for this specific act. Obviously, not for any of the crazy shit that she's doing now with the negatives, but like it's so clear from even just this small scene that Cameron, who was what 15 or something, 16, I don't know how old she was at the time, but um had been basically roped into volunteer work 24/7 like for and it kind of had she'd built up a lot of resentment from it. And if I was Dwight Frick, who, I don't know, a teacher, a headmaster, whatever, um seeing her reaction being like to this being like, oh, like she's so clearly being put upon by being forced to do all this volunteering stuff without being considered, like it's already a red flag to me that something's going wrong with the parenting.
Yeah, there's such a sense of injustice right from the get go about the way this, like, Wildbow throws us straight into like this search has gotten to the point where they're like emptying her pockets, checking her shoes.
Mm,
Obviously, there's one jeering student who suggests it could be in her bra. Like, yeah, I don't know. I was already kind of like on her mum's side a little bit with this whole thing where it's like, okay, like this, stealing $50 from charity or whatever is like serious, but also like, come on, guys, like this is ridiculous. Kind of searching her publicly like this, and like her
yes.
mom is like on the sidelines, like, I don't wait. There were better ways to handle this, and it like it was just crazy. Like I already hated this teacher because I was like, you were doing such a shitty job of handling this.
Mm, yeah, it's yeah, it's rough. It's rough. Even without the finding out the real context to Cameron and her mom's relationship, like I was already on Cameron's side on this one.
Yeah, like, and I mean, I think the other thing that really was really fun on a reread was I kind of was on Cameron's mum's side as much as Cameron's reading this the first
Mm,
time. And there's some really funny lines on a reread. Like there's this bit where her mum kind of forgets how much she's been accused of stealing, and Cameron suppresses a sigh at this. And the way it's phrased, it just kind of makes it sound like she's sighing at the whole thing, whereas obviously it's the fact that her mum has like forgotten a detail here.
mm,
Um, and then, like, the fact that her mum offers to pay the $50 to be done with this ritual humiliation, and Cameron scoffs at it. And at first, I thought she was like kind of laughing at what her mum was saying, but like clearly her mum does not have $50 to like. Yeah, it's very funny reading this first scene a second time and seeing how much this is Cameron just hating how her mum is defending her.
mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah. We'll talk about this more, I guess, when we get the additional context later.
Yeah.
Um, but so yeah, the attack on the BHI begins, and the scrapping starts pretty quick.
Yeah, I love how it opens with like the shockwave of Monty taking over the barrier. Like, I think there's a lot of fun mirroring here because obviously, so much of this story at various points has been about Kennett's boundary and stuff happening to that, and it's really fun seeing an equivalent in a different place kind of suffering the same treatment. Like back in arcs 9 and 10, there was so much like ado made about Monty taking over the Kennet boundary and what that did to everyone inside, so it kind of really landed for me when Monty takes it here, and I'm like, well, doesn't that make everyone inside like kind of fucking bonkers? So yeah, I don't know, it was just really fun watching Kennet break down somebody else's boundary for once.
Yeah. Yeah. Vengeance for the Kennet border.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. I really liked just seeing Charles's lords were all here and contributing. Like, so we get the ordinary family stuff in a little bit, but also just like seeing them all here lined up as an army is so crazy. It's such a crazy moment of like, they're all so powerful and they're all just coming to this fight. Like, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, like we see the ruins worm for the first time, and you just get this vibe that it's like a fucking dragon just sort of zipping out of the ground, unleashing echoes, flying through the air for a bit, and then like disappearing back into the ground. There's like talk later on of Monty fighting one of the Technomantic lords out in the background. Like there's just the epicness of the fight really comes through in the fact that the lords are all just around and they're all here, as you said. Like,
yeah,
it's a hype giant final fight.
Yeah, Black Scalpel is here, just ready to do their thing.
I think it's really fun too, because the lords are really the only reason that this wasn't going to be a landslide from the get go. Like Charles's lords are by far his biggest asset, apart from maybe Marisika. So it's just so fun seeing them in action, I guess. I think, as you said, they've so many of them have appeared at various points in the story, but it's always been like one at a time, and it's always been so indirect. And it's like now Kennet is fighting all of them at once. It's so hype. But like, you know, credit where it's due. The X-Forsworn are actually kind of pulling their weight here too. Like Helen's arm maneuver to hold Monty off for a bit is pretty sick. I love how it then ends up with her arm being in the way, so she just gets Joel to cut it off, and he does it without hesitating.
It is very fun.
Like, I mean, because part of me was like, you know, that's teamwork. Like, you know, you are in sync with your teammates when you can be like, cut off my arm, and they're like, yep, got it, and they just do it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, I feel like the Kennetys are probably also at the point where if Verona just turned to Avery and was like, quick, stab me in the face, Avery would probably hesitate a bit, but do it. But it took them a while to get there, you know?
Yeah. No, you're right. It's fun that this is the type of relationship they have where they trust each other so deeply that they're willing to mutilate each other without question.
You know, she knows Joel well enough that she can be like, hey, cut off my arm, and she knows he's going to do it.
He's just going to do it. He'd probably do it without even,
but you know, I mean, again, this is what's fun, is like, I think we do see like a handful of really cool teamwork bits from the Forsworn and the Negatives here, and I think that's really fun, because it's not, you know, there's some bits to Charles's whole shtick that we don't hate, and they're manifesting here as like, the way Griffin supports Cameron at times, like, I don't know, it like, I really like that they're not just like caricaturely incapable of teamwork. There's some really solid synergy here.
Yeah.
Also, but sorry, I just want to rag on Joel for a sec, as much as I
Sure.
want to compliment the rest of his teamwork. We keep seeing he has these big guns, and they're very cool, but also almost all of them shoot like fire and magma. And part of me is like, well, no wonder you've never managed to kill a dragon, mate. Like, you're shooting fire at a dragon. I don't know how dragons work in this universe, I guess, but
we've seen a dragon. Remember, they roll around on the ground and spew fire all over themselves,
and fart fire, I think, is what Connor did. Yeah,
yes, true.
I just thought it was so funny that it's like this dude keeps shooting fire, and part of me is just like, you must be a shit dragon slayer. You're shooting fire at dragons. Like, no wonder you've never killed
Who would win, Joel or the dragon Connor?
You might finally get a kill. Also, sorry, you brought up the Ordinary Family, and because we just got to talk about, like, it's so funny when they sort of take over, and Cameron is so desperate for like a white picket fence perfect life. Like she's a very fun. There's a lot of fun overlap and contradictions between like her and Verona. But it's so funny that the ordinary family sweeps through and they put like Seth in a nice, ordinary suit, and they put her in this little dress, and she's just like, oh, this would be so nice. And that classic wild bird thing where she's so close and yet so far from everything she wants. Like, yeah, I don't know. I thought it was so funny the way that the ordinary family just is everything she kind of wants, and yet she's like fighting tooth and nail against exactly that here.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. Maybe the ordinary family should just take Cameron. Maybe that would be what Cameron wants, to be part of a loving ordinary family.
And she kind of says that's what she wants, but
they
don't touch her.
Yeah,
like I think
right.
she straight up says that. Like the ordinary family is so fun because I think this is just all Cameron wants. She just wants. She's kind of like the opposite of Kira Lynn, I guess. Like the bits of overlap that they have with Verona, at least, are kind of opposites. Like Kira Lynn wants absolutely nothing to do with just that simple life, whereas Cameron just wants some people to like her. A bit of that's the bit of Avery, she just wants some people to love her and just have a simple, easy life. And the ordinary family here gives her a taste of that, and then she can't quite have it because of the team that she's chosen.
Yeah. Speaking of Cameron, she explains here her 12-step process for getting her sight.
Yeah, well, it's like 12 times 12 steps, right?
Yeah, true. Well, it's 12 steps, but each step has a lot of sub-steps.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's no simple 12-step program. It's an involved one.
But yeah, so I just think it's really interesting because we also find out that she knows that Nicolette only did 7 of these sight types. And I just think it's a really fun, beat where it shows how high her ambition is. Like, she's almost doubling one of the other really powerful and cool augurs that we know. Like, it's really, she set her sights high, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing, right? Is like it sounds like she grew up in an environment where she was encouraged to be a massive overachiever. And like, this is just, I guess, that, like, she just, I don't know. I mean, part of me, I really struggle to analyze this too much without bias, because hearing about this ritual, I was like, well, yeah, I'd do that at the highest number I could possibly get away with. Like, this is the coolest shit ever. I mean, Nicolette's cool glasses were like the best thing she owned. Like, I totally get Cameron wanting to, emulate it. But yeah, I don't know. It's like, it's also, part of me can't help but, like, she's so desperate. Like, this comes into the little fairy site she's using everything. I think Cameron is so desperate to protect herself. And it's like, it's kind of an extension of that. It's like, as much as it's overachieving, I think it's also just, she needs to feel like she's covering all the angles. So she's just like, she just wants as many of these sites as she can, because she needs all the tools she can get, because she wants, to be able to protect herself.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know, and it makes sense for her as well, because there is a lot of focus on, I think Cameron comes across as a very visual person in this chapter. Like, she's very focused on sight with a little s. Like, it makes sense that she ended up in Augury, I guess, but, like, because obviously she's using this fairy thing, and everything in the chapter is very color coded. But she gives so much attention to, like, Seth's, same diff, eyes, and, like, how that's the part of him that she's kind of really attracted to. And yeah, like so much of Cameron's shtick is kind of visualizing all the aspects of the world, I guess. So it also just really makes sense to me that she's going all in on this thing, because so much she really leans on visual stuff as her main sense, and this allows her to visualize more aspects of the world.
Yeah,
and obviously that focus on visual stuff ties in a very horrifying way into all of her body image issues, because she developed so early.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're right. She has a lot of eye focus.
Yeah.
We also get some great Douglas did it moments, which is very good. He's a real hero. He gets up to some real shenanigans when he comes in to help his daughter, I think.
Yeah, which I feel like we got her name arcs and arcs ago,
I
but I
think
couldn't
it's
tell you what it is.
Uma on the Run.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we finally maybe get it confirmed that we might have been right when he first showed up. That Douglas's power is kind of being able to make things true by saying he did them.
Yes.
Like Uma manages to sort of get back up on her feet and fight back when he goes on about how he raised her to be really good at basically doing that.
Yeah, and how he's like, oh, I have potions to be able to help her, blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah. It's like, did you really do that? And he's like, yes, I did.
He's such a funny character.
That's such a funny power. It's so lost. I love it. I also love Uma drops a bunch of like goblin stink bombs here, and I love the detail that Cameron starts vomiting into her mouth, but thinks the taste of the vomit is better than the taste of the air with the stink bomb in it, so she kind of leaves it in her mouth. Especially, I'm pretty sure she kisses Seth like 10 minutes from now too, so that's a fun detail.
Good times. He deserves it.
Yeah, I have no issues with that.
Yes. So yeah, it's not just the Lords and the Negatives fighting though, because even the Brownies are up to it if they get permission.
I'm so fucking happy the Brownies are back. Like, this is...
Yeah.
I had a good chuck. It somehow hadn't occurred to me that even though we were recentering on the Blue Heron, that might mean the Brownies were involved in this. And they're such a perfect thing to match up with Soot Sleeves. Like, the idea that all the Brownies are fighting all these little animals like pigeons and rats. It just works.
Yeah. Oh, it's very fun. It's so fun. I really wish the Brownies were on our team, because seeing, a brownie riding on a pigeon to attack Cameron or whatever would just be so much fun.
Yeah, I'm really curious what the offer was. So we get told, like, the Brownies are basically like, hey, they came to us with an offer, and we're inclined not to take it. What do you think? And she manages to dodge, telling them to do it or thanking them or whatever. So then it's kind of like entirely up to the Brownies what side they want to be on, and they choose to fight alongside Charles and co. So, like, what could the offer have been?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a interesting one, isn't it? Because they're already... Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the having the offer thing was just a trick, and there was, like, they were always going to fight alongside. There's no offer that they were... I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious to get more info on that. Like, because, okay, I mean, there's clearly some stuff up with the Brownies. I mean, I don't know if you want to read out this next part that you've pulled out, but there's some more brownie shoes to drop, I think.
Well, yeah. So we do get this bit where there's a person in the brownie realm, right? A very ruddy face peered out. Apparently the same person. There's like hands reaching out, like, yeah.
And he's very polite, very proper.
I mean, is it Bristow, do you think? Is it meant to be Bristow?
It feels like we're meant to
think
walk away with the implication that it was probably Bristow.
Or just some other brownie victim, right?
Yeah. But it just, I hope it's Bristow. That's so funny. I want it to be Bristow. I want, we were talking last week about how we are seeing the faces of Alexander in this final conflict, and that's great. Like, from a story perspective, sort of getting the story's first villain and incorporating aspects of his energy into the finale. And I'd love for that to happen to Bristow as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to get insight into what he's been like, it answers questions about the Brownies too. If we get more info on him, like it's too fun for me to possibly entertain any other idea that it's not Bristow.
I hope we get it just like we had Daniel Elitz's interlude bit. I hope we get a Bristow interlude and we just see how shit his life has been being part of being within the Brownie stuff.
I mean, because, okay, it's meant to be pretty fucking bad, right? Like, how bad does it have to be before you start to feel pretty sympathetic towards Bristow? Like, that's I don't want the Bristow interlude because I don't want to have to confront the fact that now I feel bad for him, even though he agreed to go there rather than give in because he's an idiot.
Yeah. So yeah, we jump back to the past again, and we see the truth this time. Cameron's mum is the real villain, and her mind is starting to drift.
I mean, villain seems harsh.
Well, in the sense of she's the one responsible for the charity.
Oh, that's
theft,
fair.
I guess.
Sure. I mean, yeah, like, the injustice here, like, it just makes you so angry that it's like, no, not only was her mum the one who'd been doing this for ages and not gotten in trouble. But Cameron had used all of her own personal money to cover up her mum's crimes. And then, of course, she gets caught when she steals the 50. I was like, God, I'm angry for her. Like, this is such bullshit.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. It's a rough situation. That like Cameron really was doing. The worst part is Cameron was doing the best she could. Like there was no way out of this
Yeah.
situation for her, right? Like she was not only existing within the situation, but trying to, I don't know, trying to like do in her own kind of childy way, trying to resolve it.
I mean, yeah, she's a Verona without a Lucy and without any
Yeah.
access to magic because she's got this parent who's at home with her that she's spending all of her home life being the parent of.
Yes.
And then she's got another parent who just fucked right off.
Yeah.
Like the home life parallels, especially after last chapter, it feels like it's kind of impossible to miss the parallels between Cameron and Verona's home lives.
Yeah, totally. And of course, the only way out of this situation, the way to get out of this situation is to raise it to somebody for help, which she did to her dad, and it didn't do anything. So of
Yeah.
course, like, what can she do other than try and kind of, I don't know, blow it up and leave, right? Like, what else is there?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Like, and this is that thing, we saw Verona all but abandon her dad to go to the Blue Heron at the start of the story, and I feel like
Mm-hmm.
the general consensus from the fandom was supporting Verona in this.
Yep.
And that's basically what Cameron's doing here. Cameron was like, "Look, I fucking tried and I can't," and she's just abandoned her mum. She's doing the same thing, ignoring her mum's phone calls, like Verona did with her dad. And you
Mm.
can't help but feel,
Yeah.
well, not feel like she's doing that much wrong.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, in that circumstance, she's obviously doing some wrong things by how she's choosing to side and what she's doing in this fight. But
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, but I mean, it's that like guy you can see why she's making the choices she is, right? Like, I don't know.
Mm.
It feels unreasonable to expect Cameron to be doing anything different.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, the other side of like, I think like the part that almost doesn't get enough attention from Cameron because I think she's intentionally avoiding thinking about it, but like the big thing that seems to be sitting in the back of her mind, scaring her, is also this potentially is what's awaiting her. Like, the big thing for her mum is presumably only around 40-ish, like in her
Mm-hmm.
40s or something.
Yeah.
And her mum's like, no, 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 it's too early for me. And Cameron makes a comment at some point about how it's like she's only lived half her life and it's already fading.
Yeah.
And, obviously Cameron's her daughter. Like something that is sort of not written there, but is in the
Yes.
background is Cameron is clearly at risk of this happening to her as well. And that's
Yes.
like, so she's kind of already halfway through her own life too. Like she's kind of having a midlife crisis basically
Mm.
at age 16. Like it's fucked up.
Mm. Yeah. It's rough. It's pretty
Yeah.
rough.
And so I kind of hope we get to see more of Cameron and Kira Lynn interact because again, the more we talk about this stuff with Cameron, the more I'm like, what's fun about her is her and Kira Lynn are so different. Like Cameron and Kira Lynn are on this team, but for completely opposite reasons. They're very different people, but they seem to be gravitating towards each other in a very fun way. I kind of want to see more of the two of them interact because they've got
Mm.
so much stuff to work off each other.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so the battle is kind of raging on. Some dog tags get captured, and Seth continues to pester Cameron to sleep with him, just like a good boyfriend should.
You almost got through being able to say that with a straight face.
Ay,
Yeah,
ay, ay.
we haven't really talked about this aspect of Seth yet, but yeah, there's obviously a through line throughout this entire chapter is like he's, trying to pressure, bully, whatever you want to call it, coerce Cameron into getting more and more physical with him.
Yep.
And clearly, sort of, when she lays down boundaries, respecting them for the minimum amount of time required.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if
Um,
even, to be honest.
well,
And,
yeah,
and like trying to find. There's this really slimy bit here where. Actually, I think it's this bit where he convinces her to spend the night in his room, which is a boundary that she had set.
but it's to protect her.
Oh, my mistake. My mistake. Then that's okay.
Yeah. Um, No, wait, I think the thing that like really gets to me here from Cameron's perspective is, there's all the parts where Seth is sort of like, oh, do you want me to stop pushing on the room thing, or like physicality in general? And Cameron thinks to herself, well, relationships involve compromises. So like she kind of lets him fill her up more than she'd like, but as a compromise. And it's this very like reading the things like, oh, well, relationships have compromise. So it's like, yes, but also no, not like this. Like this girl needs a fucking parent who can explain to her what the phrase relationships have compromises actually means, because it's not this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait for Seth to die. It'll be good. It'll be so fun.
I'm very interested to see where he ends up. I mean, I'm hoping Y becomes a factor again in as we start to take down Seth, because I love Y as kind of being Y and Nicolette as being the other aspects of Alexander. Like, I want to see Seth get taken down by the other aspects of Alexander's legacy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Cameron is so close as well, because we've got to talk about this part. Like, obviously they bind some dog tags here, and we didn't really talk about the fact that they bind and spellbind Uma on the Run, and Douglas did it. And Cameron keeps having all these moments where she's like, oh, this makes me feel bad, but it needs to happen, so I guess I'll just sort of suffer through it. It's just like she's so close.
Yeah. 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 She can be converted, I think.
Yeah. I was serious before. I think send her to hang out with America.
Yeah.
I don't think she'd be a good fit for Verona's halfway house. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't know.
I don't know. Hard to say.
Raquel might be a better fit. Wherever Raquel's halfway housing people at the moment. Actually, stick it with the rest of the Bellingers. Or, ironically enough, I think like someone like Nicolette would be a much better fit for Cameron.
Yeah. True. Very true.
But yeah, I don't know. It is like, I guess to sort of tie some stuff together. I do love like the way Cameron, like all the negatives kind of feels like she's touching on issues that all three of the Kennetys have battled with. Like, she's got this injustice and not being respected angle that overlaps with some of Lucy. She's fucking chronically lonely like Avery has been. And much like Verona, she's struggled with, bad parenting and getting that white picket fence life. Although, obviously she's very different to whether she wants it to Verona. But I guess, it's so fun having that in this perspective at the like, as we're doing this climactic fight at the end of the story, getting a villain who kind of didn't get the support but has similar issues to all three Kennetys is a really fun sort of energy to carry through.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. I mean, I was hoping we would get a Matthew or a Miss or a Toadie interlude to show the fight, but showing it from the other side is pretty fun. Maybe we'll get another interlude later with more of this battle.
Yeah, I'm hoping this is one of those arcs that doesn't stop at the letter B. I want a lot more letters.
Yeah. A full alphabet of interludes. But yeah, so that's the end of our chapters to discuss this week. But of course, we have some predictions left by folks in our Pale Predictor spreadsheet. Remember, you can get your predictions in by clicking in the link in the show notes down below. And whoever gets the best prediction might win a prize when we do All Packed Up 2. That's something we were planning on doing, right, Elliot?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, cool. I didn't just make that up. Cool. So get your predictions in and you could win a special prize.
Ooh. Yeah, so speaking of, do you want to go over the prediction you've brought this week?
Yeah, I brought a prediction from I'm Easily Impressed, which, well, it's a Rook prediction. A Rook is actually a double agent prediction, so I think we all kind of have been mulling that one over. But the points that I'm Easily Impressed brings out specifically are: one, in this chapter, Rook encourages the binding of others, which seems pretty unlike her, so there's probably something she's going to do around that's going to, fix that. Also, she probably, like, we know the rest of the Kim family is on their way here, and Rook probably knows Helen's secret, so she might be about to drop some big anti-Kim family.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that, but that's a very fun,
Yeah, like, I think that definitely could happen and be pretty cool. So, those are the beats that I'm easily impressed pulled out that make the Rook double agent theory hang together for me. So yeah, I like it.
I mean, I definitely. There's no way in my head that Rook is not bringing the whole Kim family here to fuck them all over. Like, regardless of the rest of it, it's just we saw in Helen's interlude that Rook clearly fucking knows what's up with her, and it's a big practitioner family. Like, fucking yes, Rook. We're with you. I do want to push back though on the part where I'm easily impressed is saying that the encouraging the binding of others seems very unlike her, because I think Rook does that all the time. Like that has been a whole thing with Bridge and the others. It's like something that has defined Rook for a lot of the story is that she uses the tools of her oppressors to fight them, and kind of muddies the line between whether she's better or worse than practitioners. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, this is the whole thing with Rook is like, she's just whatever bad things that she's supporting Team Charles, what Team Charles is doing, she's also just as against a lot of the stuff Kennett's doing. So I kind of lean towards remaining on remaining thinking that she hasn't yet picked what side she's going to be on. She's just continuing to be in the best position for her right now.
Yes, that's classic Rook for sure.
For my own, I didn't pull out a prediction, but rather I really wanted to highlight this comment from the Reddit thread for 23.b, and it's from a user called Hey No Swearing.
Which is a great username given what they're about to talk about.
Yeah, well, so they brought up that the ordinary family, who I keep calling the no ordinary family, just ordinary family. The ordinary family had massive WandaVision vibes in this chapter, and part of me, like, maybe I've forgotten it, or whatever, part of me was like, how's nobody compared the ordinary family to WandaVision? It's perfect.
That is good. Hey, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Hey, no swearing, but I have to talk about the TV show No Ordinary Family for a moment.
I think we've already done this. Elliot? Yeah, we already talked about this because this is the first time this has happened. Yeah, I think we're the only two people on the planet who watch No Ordinary Family.
It's just like, I remember this one bit from the finale so clearly, which is with the son who's got like magic math powers or something. He calculates exactly how he has to throw, I want to say, a syringe into the villain's eye. Is that
yeah, that sounds familiar.
The show is called No Ordinary Family. It ran for one season. It was terrible and it was cancelled.
Yeah.
God, 20 episodes. Why did I watch 20 episodes of this?
That was when I was back in college. I had so much time to watch all the TV. I miss those days.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Tag Guide says they've seen it. So that's at least 3 of us who watched this show.
Thank God. Yeah. What a show. Why? I don't know why I watched it. I just don't understand. Like, what? Oh, the kid in it was what's her face from The Flash?
No, go. It's her sister.
Oh, never mind. I was wrong. Whoops.
No, it's the wife from Dexter is the mum. I remember. That's why I started watching it, because I had a huge Julie Benz thing at the time, and then the dad is also something from someone.
Michael Chiklis, yeah,
who is from.
I don't know. He's been in a bunch of stuff. He's just kind of a pretty well-known character actor, I think. He was in American Horror Story for a bit.
Oh, he's from Fantastic Four.
Oh, yeah, he was the Thing in Fantastic Four. Yeah, Ben Grimm. Anyway, yeah. God, No Ordinary Family. What a show. And now, anyway, enough talk about No Ordinary Family, at least for this episode. We'll talk about it more next episode.
Please no. We've already talked about it so much more than it deserves.
Maybe we should... It's actually the exact perfect type of show for us to do a season of The High Ground about.
I was worried you were going to say that. Let's talk about the discussion question that we asked last week, because I'd rather talk about anything else.
Sure.
Yeah, so the discussion question we asked is, what would be the best path to have your wedding on? And that was provided to us by Sage of Stupidity.
Yes. I loved a lot of the answers here. Vice Versa's answer, I guess, was just a bunch of puns, which was good.
Respect it.
I especially loved Zoomtown. If you've a drive to keep your communication skills strong, which was very funny.
Yeah, I also like Falling Oak Avenue would be a good way to show how hard you've fallen for each other.
Yes, very fun. So yeah, then so Min Min was the person to first bring this up that I saw. Talking about the cakewalk, which obviously core elements of the cakewalk are cake and knowing the ranking of importance of the people there, right?
Well,
Which is
everyone's like seated in specific zones and stuff, right? Or
yes,
yeah.
which is like so Min Min pointed out the cakewalk kind of already has pretty strong wedding vibes with between the cake and the like, doing a seating plan for a wedding is effectively ranking how close you are to people and then kind of grouping them for tables, right? Like that's kind of already what a wedding is. So I was just kind of like I was really floored by how perfect that answer was.
Yeah, I mean, there's the small side effect, I think, which is that everyone has to walk through the kitchen first, and I like
Mm-hmm.
that's just not very. I don't know, like
Well,
that's not as fancy wedding vibe. That's the only
you're
problem I can
playing
see
the
with it.
caterers in the cakewalk. You're the catering crew.
Oh, I assume if you hosted the wedding, that
Sure,
not.
sure. But like talking about I've moved past this discussion question now because I wanted to, I guess, so Beleg Tal pointed out that there almost certainly is a path themed around having a perfect wedding. So going there and doing a wedding would be perfect. But then this made me think like the cakewalk might have actually at one point been this path. Like the cakewalk is a path where you're effectively playing the catering crew at a wedding. And so it's just kind of, it's really interesting. I just found that like conceptually to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. There's just that one problem with it, which is that the kitchen is sort of the home base.
Yeah.
Is all I can think of. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so
Um.
I loved that idea. And
Yeah.
I've had canon to
I think
that's
like to
where cakewalk comes from conceptually.
Yeah. Well, to touch on Beleg thing, yeah, I agree. Like, I don't. I imagine there isn't really a path that's about a perfect wedding because perfect weddings are remembered.
Hmm.
So it's like there'd be. I feel like it's more all the wedding stuff would be the bits it's the lost aspects of this stuff, the stuff that's just in imagination and falls through the cracks. So, like you said, yeah, like the caterers are the perfect sort of thing where they're like so often undervalued and sort of things. So of course the cakewalk kind of centers around them.
Does the
But
cakewalk have a boss?
yeah, it's the chef lady, I think,
Right.
in
Okay.
at the start. Yeah.
I was kind of hoping it would be there would be a bridezilla, but that would really bring my theory home. But I guess not.
No, like I reckon, I feel like if there was a like overtly wedding themed path, it would be like just really bad weather there, so like rain or snow. Like
Oh, that's
I love
rough.
the idea
Yeah.
that it's more themed on like a wedding that didn't happen.
Mm, yeah.
Anyway, so we could probably theorize about that for ages. I find lost stuff really hard to come up with because
Mm,
it's so hard to get really weird with the bits that are missing. I always respect Walbo's ability to do that.
yeah. Yeah.
Like he manages to come at it from like obtuse angles, and that's really fun.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, other answers we got Hobo Demon was saying not that really romantic the star-crossed path one, I think it
yeah.
was. That Avery went on and met the nice Punjabi, I think it was,
Hmm.
girl
Hmm.
on. Because I don't know. That sounds like a great visual location to me.
Yeah. Then they went for kick the can path, and mentioning that it ties into having kids and a traditional life plan, and I don't remember that at all from the path, so I didn't really follow that.
Well, because you get a bit of money for it, so it's all about like saving and being frugal.
I see. Okay. Sure. Sure. That tracks.
Like
Um,
yeah. I
I
like the idea of having like a support, like the thing with weddings, right, is obviously there can be dramas with who you invite, but kick the can, you get that cheering crowd, right? So
mm,
like that's nice. Like you'd say your I do's or whatever, and then everybody would cheer, and that like that's a perk.
yeah. Sure. Um, then we got answers from Adello and I'm easily impressed that seemed to try and give the worst possible answers. So
Yeah.
Adello gave the burning daylight, terrible, and for practical reasons, and I'm easily impressed gave stuck in place to really emphasize the permanence of the marriage, which is terrible from a I don't know, metaphorical perspective, I guess.
No, I'm easily impressed. Is just they believe in the traditional sanctity of marriage.
Sure, sure.
None of this new age divorce nonsense.
Stuck in place though, it's like just from the name alone, it's so clearly the connotations are so bad.
I mean, yeah, I guess it depends. Like, I feel like there are people out there who want a marriage that's just going to be like, okay, and now we're glued together and we just sit
where they
inside
feel
and watch
stuck.
TV.
Yeah, sure.
I could totally see some people being into that.
But Elliot, I'm that kind of person, and I wouldn't ever describe my relationship as being stuck in place.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, some very fun discussion, question answers, and one just true fact about the cakewalk being a wedding path themed themed path. So yeah, we've got a new discussion question. I'm easily impressed as the writer of the worst answer to the discussion question gets to suggest the next discussion question. That's the system.
Yeah. So okay. Our discussion question from I'm easily impressed is, what is your weirdest volunteer experience?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, you know, we saw Cameron have this really weird one here where she got awarded a bunch of bracelets. So I'm curious. I'm curious to hear other people's funny stories of weird volunteer stuff they've had to do.
Yeah. So leave us your stories about your weirdest volunteering experience in the discussion thread, which you can find linked in the show notes down below. That's also
Do you
where you
have
can.
one, Ruben? Do you have an answer for this? I'm curious.
I'll have to think through it a bit more. I haven't. I don't think I've had any volunteering experiences that would be weird. Like I feel like they've all gone pretty normal for me. I
Yeah,
can't think of one that's gone weird. Yeah.
Because I've got an example that's jumping into my mind, but I don't know if it's weird so much as just very related to Cameron's one, where I
some magical bracelets.
No, I accidentally stole a bunch of stuff from a charity.
Oh right.
Well, no, so I didn't steal it from the charity. Well,
give us the story, Elliot. Come on.
Oh, so I was working in a stall at the school fete, and the stall I was working at was the one with, what do you call, you know, the like just little baskets of shit. Well, not literal shit, but you know, like you'd have like just like, I can't remember the word for it, but you know, so it's like one was like a basket and it was all these like chocolates, and then there was another one's basket and might have like flowers and shampoos and shit. And so basically people from the school community had like built these things and donated them, and then we were selling them for various prices at the fete. And so I was working there with this girl who was my next door neighbor, and at one point I saw her go under this table with a big tablecloth on it and pull out an extra basket and give it to her dad. And so I thought that was where we were keeping the extra baskets. So as we started to run out and I was there on my own later, I went under that table and pulled out a bunch of baskets and put them on the table and sold them all because they were all they had some of the coolest shit in them.
Yeah.
It turns out what had happened was some people had come in early, taken those best baskets, like paid for them, and then put them under the table because they didn't want to carry them around all day. And so I had just like stolen these baskets that my neighbors and stuff had already paid for and just resold them.
Good on you. But that's not stealing from the charity. That's earning double money for the charity.
I guess. But I never got caught. Like because I left. Like my shift ended 2 hours before the day ended.
So how did you find out that that's what had happened?
Well, so I've never dealt with the fallout from this. It occurred to it occurred to me later. I think as I was leaving, I saw that the girl who was my next door neighbor, like she lifted up the tablecloth and then asked someone where all the baskets that were under there were, and that was like as I was leaving.
Right.
And I just didn't go back.
No, wow, that's hardcore. I love it. But really, Elliot, yeah, you've done well here because what you've done is earn more money for the charity by double selling the goods. So you've done nothing wrong.
Well, and like, okay, I've spent years trying to justify this to myself.
Well, nobody told you that they had already been sold.
Well, no, I did just start pulling shit out and selling it. But also, I don't know, it seems kind of shitty for the people working the stall to just, I don't know, call dibs on all the best ones.
Oh yeah, totally.
Because I didn't get to do that, you know. Like this wouldn't have happened if I'd been included and been allowed to call dibs on one of the big chocolate baskets myself.
Yeah, I like this. This is good. Yeah, I think. Well, obviously this podcast and all the podcasts we've done together has been a long con to Sting to finally get the answer to this. But now that we're here, I'm just going to say I'll exonerate you. I find the defendant not guilty of any crimes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway,
this
can
is
leave
something I think back to fairly regularly, and it was like 20 years ago at this point.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like it. Huzzah.
Huzzah.
So yeah, you can leave your answer to this discussion question. Which charity did you rob? / what's your weirdest volunteer experience? You can leave your answer to that in the discussion thread, which is linked in the show notes down below.
Yes, you can also visit the Doof Media website, doofmedia.com, to find out about all the other great shows on the Doof Media network. I want to give a plug to the Doofcast, who have been covering a bunch of great movies recently, and I might be on there soon, so check it out.
Yeah. Hey, while you're checking things out, why not check out our Twitter? Every single day we post a different Pale-themed meme, so you can head over there and get some good guffaws.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a good website to be on right now, I think.
That's true. Twitter will never die.
A thriving ecosystem. Speaking of, there's the Doof Media Patreon, patreon.com/Doof Media. It's thriving. If you Patreon us, it allows us to keep making this show. It funds like the prizes that are going to be in All Packed Up 2, all the other parts of All Packed Up 2, and it also gives you bonus shows. So if you want to hear us talk about No Ordinary Family some more, that's where it's going to be.
Yeah, that's where it's. I can't wait until we do that show. That'll be pretty fun. But yes, while you're on Patreon, make sure you check out Wildbow's Patreon as well. Patreon.com/Wildbow, because he needs money to keep writing this story. So head down to your local charity stall, take $50 and send it his way.
Yeah, donate the money to Wildbow and just give it all to him.
Don't
be a Cameron.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, folks, and we'll catch you next time.
See you, everyone.